To make value scales for tints, shades, and tones, you'll need a ruler and a pencil. You're going to make 3 value scales of 5 squares. I made mine 10 inches long with the squares measuring 2 inches wide. So here I am trying to decide where to put the scale. I'm going to put it somewhere here in the middle. Again, I'm making a 10-inch wide value scale, so I'm measuring every 2 inches to get 5 squares. I scooch my ruler down a bit, no need to measure, just eyeball it. Measure off every 2 inches. And now connect all your markings. After you've completed one, go on to the second one and repeat the process. Do this 3 times for a total of 3 scales. Now you're going to label each of your value scales. The top one should be labeled tints, the second one should be labeled shades, and the third one should be labeled tones. Now we're ready to start making our value scale using tints. I have white, black, and blue on my palette. Right now I'm only going to use blue and white to make my tints. In the first square on the left, I'm going to put just the color. In this case, I'm putting just blue. I haven't added anything to it. Once I have my square of just the color, I'm going to clean my brush off, and now I'm going to start with the lightest tint. I do this by taking white and just a little dab of the color and mixing it in. It should look almost white. Never be afraid to use too much white. Some students want to start with the color and then gradually add the white to it to try to lighten it up. But this results in a very, very difficult and very confusing value scale because there's no difference between the two. As you work your way back towards the blue, you should be able to see the color getting a little bit darker by just putting the color back into the white. As you can see, there is some difference between them. Now I'm going to add a little bit more blue to try to finish up this value scale, and then I'm going to look at it to make sure that there's a good difference between and that there isn't such a dramatic jump in value. As I'm laying this one down, I can already tell that between the blue on the left and the one right next to it, it's quite a bit of a jump. I'm going to darken it up just a little bit by adding some more blue to that white and paint directly over. There we go. That looks a little bit better to me. I'm going to add a little bit more blue to it, or in this case, a little bit more white, I should say, and add it to the middle one to darken it up just a little bit. Now, the way I can tell that I have a good value scale is when I cover the value scale where I can only see 2 squares, I can see a good difference. For the shades, I'm going to repeat the process, but this time I'm going to add black. In this case, while I'm making shades, I'm not going to start at the very right. Instead, I'm going to gradually add black to that blue and work my way to the right. Again, you want to see some difference. But because I'm using blue and because it's such a dark color already, that difference might be a little bit hard to see. Don't worry, just keep moving towards the right, constantly adding a little bit more black each time, and soon you'll be able to see a difference, even if it's just a little bit. Add a little bit more black. I can see it is getting darker. And then finally, adding quite a bit more black to it to where the blue is almost black. This should be my last shade. Now we're going to move on to tones. To get started, what I like to do is I like to mix a medium gray. So I take a little bit of black, a little bit of white, and I mix it together, a nice medium gray. I do this first to have it prepared, so when it's time I can just add a little bit to my blue. I'm going to clean my brush off and repeat the first step like I did in the tints and the shades. I'm going to add just a little bit of blue to that first square. Now I'm going to pick up some of that gray and I'm going to add it to my blue. This is going to make a very nice blue-gray. And I'm going to add it to the square right next to it. Now you can see it's starting to dull. The color is starting to get less vibrant, less intense. Now I'm going to add just a little bit more white to that to start to lighten the tone just a little bit. It still should look kind of gray. It still should look a little dull, not as intense as the blue, but it should start to get a little bit lighter. And as with the tints and the shades, as you're painting, you want to be able to see a difference between the squares that are next to each other. Working on my last square now by adding just a little bit more white, although I am going to lighten this square up just a little bit. Felt like maybe it was a bit too dark, too similar to the one next to it. And I'm going to add that one down, and that looks nice because I can see a difference between this square and the one to the left of it. Again, I compare the two by two, and I can see a difference. There you go, tints, shades, and tones.